Hi everyone, Donna here with Bookkeeping Made Simple, and today I want to talk about probably the bane of every work-at-home professional's existence, and that is dealing with interruptions. Now, this happens in corporate offices as well. If you are actually working in an office, it does still happen, but I'm not talking about a client coming in and asking questions. Those are usually pretty welcome interruptions. I'm talking about dealing with family, neighbors, friends, and spouses who interrupt your workday. There are ways to handle this. So, and I'm going to preface this by pointing out that I do have ADHD, so getting interrupted is a massive derailment for me. With that said, I'm going to do the housekeeping and say, if you enjoy these videos, please like, share, and subscribe. This is what I use to market my business and grow my channel, and I am really anxious to provide quality content to you that's relevant. Sometimes it's not, but something that's relevant to you as a business owner. Business ownership is the hardest job you will ever love. It's right up there with parenting. You put your whole heart and soul into it, and you hope that it pays off. So I'm going to kind of get right into that. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the red notification bell. If you are on YouTube, you guys know what to do. This stuff's been around for 20 years. Okay, so I'm going to start off by saying I have worked from home since the late 90s. I have had all kinds of really weird work from home jobs. I also have done this throughout many stages of my life. So when I first started working from home, I was expecting my youngest. So I have dealt with this, and I was working as a inbound call center rep. So I have dealt with this with infants all the way up to adults. And I've done this as a single mom, as a homeschooling single mom, as a single mom of infants, all the way up to teenagers. I have dealt with neighbors coming in and interrupting me. And of course, my lovely spouse, who is excited and enthusiastic about things that he wants to show me, but it's not always a good time for me. So this is something that everybody struggles with, I think, whether you have ADHD or not. It is just much worse for those of us who do have ADHD. And in my case, because I'm also a night owl and I'm not really as alert as I would like to, I don't wake up fully alert. It takes me a few hours. So I am not bright-eyed and bushy-tailed first thing in the morning. And that also is kind of a strike against me. So I have to work really hard. So I've got the fact that I'm a woman. I have the fact that I have ADHD. I have the fact that I am a night owl. I have tried to change many of these, everything but the woman part. The ADHD I've tried to change. The night, just being a night owl, I've tried to change. I've tried to turn myself into a morning person. It did not end well. And I don't expect that to change anytime soon, although it might, just as a function of aging. So I want to emphasize that I have dealt with this, and interruptions are harder for me than it is for a lot of people because of the ADHD. Because I was kind of relieved when I was formally diagnosed that I had a label to slap on that and go, oh, that's what that is. So I'm going to kind of go back to the beginning. Way back in the day when I worked in corporate America, I worked in a bullpen with 20 other women. All women. I do not recommend this. I always laugh and say, people say if women ruled the world, it would be so much more peaceful. And I say, I have 5 sisters. And I've worked in a workplace full of women, and I beg to disagree. I think we need a good, healthy balance. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. And my opinion on that is actually kind of irrelevant. So I am going to kind of move forward and talk about, I would actually bring in a Walkman. For those of you who are under 30, that means it was a portable CD player. This is what we had before the iPad or the iPod. So I would bring in music. on a portable player of some kind, and I would wear earbuds or headphones actually that people could see, and that would be the only way I could focus. Now, it was easier then because I had a list and a routine that was given to me by my employer, that first you do this, then you do this, then you do this. And that's very much what I was taught to do. So first I would submit all the claims for the day. Second, I would print out my list of patients to follow up on, and these were visit by visit, not patient by patient. And then I would literally take a ruler and start crossing them off as I did them, and that was the only way I could stay focused. I was very glad that I had this much structure at the time. This was my first office job. Prior to that, I had worked in fast food, and this is when I decided that accounting was something that I could possibly do. So I would actually put on my headphones. I would get to work. I would, if someone called in, I could deal with that, but I really had a hard time with people stopping by my desk and just wanting to do the water cooler stuff. Let's just chit chat, right? I would focus to the point, if I had my headphones on and I could focus, I could get a lot of work done in a very short period of time. In fact, I would hyperfocus, which is one of ADHD's superpowers. So I would focus to the point that my colleagues would need to pat me on the shoulder and tell me it's time to go on break. You're required by law to take this break. And they would have to do that at lunchtime and for our afternoon break. I loved it. That was one of the best parts of my job, was just sitting down and working through this list. Today, things have changed. I do have a list, and I do still try to stay focused on my list. But I have to do the work to determine what needs to be done first and what can be put off. And that means that the very in-depth, high, I really need to focus on this kind of stuff, gets done late morning, before lunch, but late morning. And it can spill over into the early afternoon. And then my first thing in the morning is when I do most of my videos, because I will have already scripted them. I've already done an outline. I already know what I want to talk about. I have reminders all over the place. I have a list. I have a lot of lists. So, and I have tried every time management technique known to man. So I have tried calendar blocking. Calendar blocking is good for me in some senses because it does block out time when I can't be interrupted by meetings, because everybody has to schedule their meetings online now. So that's time that I know that I'm not going to have to stop and do a Zoom call. I'm not going to have to stop and do much of anything else. Also, as the business owner, I also have the ability to tell my staff, please don't disturb me from 10 to 2 because I'm going to be working on this. And they're usually very good about that. But not everybody has that ability. So I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning. Like I said, when I first was working in a corporate office, this was the only corporate job I had. I excelled at it because, again, it was very structured and I had a list and things that I needed to do at specific times of the day. It was already kind of regimented. And then I could put in my earbuds and really focus as part of this so that I could get a lot of work done quickly. Now, that did come with some pushback because I do distinctly remember that my team and I were called into the director's office, and I was given kudos for getting a lot of work done quickly. I got my AR days down below their target. And basically what that means is I was able to collect money that the hospital was owed very quickly, either by getting the patient to pay or submitting a secondary insurance claim. And then anything under $10, whatever their cutoff was, it was $10 or $25. I just read it off. Because I was like, it's not worth my time to try to chase down $10 or whatever their limit was. So that was really good. And that was when I realized that I needed to have a little extra something to focus. Before I started bringing in my music, I really, really struggled with focus, particularly in a bullpen. If you're sitting around with 20 women in a room and they all want to talk, it was either 20 or 25, I don't remember. And they all wanted to talk all the time because that's what women do. I said, this is a little irrelevant, but I've heard people say if women ran the world, it would be a better place. I have 5 sisters. And this was the only time I've ever worked in a female-only environment. And I can tell you, I wouldn't want to work in another one. I do like a co-ed mixed type of environment, not all women. And that is because women and men, this is my own opinion, and you can take it or leave it, okay? I am not, this is just my own experience. I am not trying to force anyone to believe the way I believe, but I do believe that women and men, when they work together, have a way of complementing each other in a lot of ways, that when you have all women, it may or may not work out as well. Anyway, it didn't leave me with a good taste in my mouth about working with a bunch of women. So we get called into the director's office. I get a lot of praise for being able to collect on money very quickly, and to be able to work quickly, process a lot of accounts quickly. And the other members of my team, there were 5 of us on the team. One of the other members took this really hard, and she felt like I was doing this to spite her. And made quite a production of it in front of the whole office. So after that, I went back to my old, let me just get gentlemen's C's kind of a thing. Let me do mediocre work so that I don't stick out like a sore thumb, right? And that's kind of been a key part of my career, was I would put in my headphones. I would get a lot of work done very quickly. When I first moved to Utah, I had a few small business jobs. I didn't work for a big corporation again, but I did have a few small business jobs. My least favorite one was being an office manager. So I worked as an office manager for a flight school / fixed base operation at our local airport. It was Provo at the time. It was a very small airport at the time. It's expanded a lot since then. So I would have to deal with a lot of things and a lot of people coming up and making requests of me. And I would really struggle with doing what needed to be done when it needed to be done. I didn't realize at the time that this was really my ADHD coming to the forefront. So it was a lot of the owners coming in and saying, would you take care of this? And so I'd be in the middle of something else. I felt like I had to drop things in order to go help the owner. And it would just snowball. And I loved the people I worked with, but I hated that job because it was very, I don't think you can have ADHD and be an efficient office manager. You have to be able to deal with a lot of distractions and interruptions. And those of us who struggle with that are not going to be good in that role. So then I went to work for another company that specialized in candles, body lotion, things like that. It was a small local company. It is still a small local company, if they're even still in business. And they were looking for a collections or a credit manager. And so they were saying it's 40 hours a week. And basically all I had to do was approve credit and or deny it, and collect on outstanding invoices. And I did that very well, to the point that about 6 weeks into this job, instead of working 40 hours a week, I could do it in 10. So I brought in $250,000 in previously uncollectible money because nobody else had followed up on it. And I did it very quickly and efficiently. And unfortunately, they didn't seem to want quick and efficient. So I had to find another job. When I started working for myself is really when the distraction piece started to rear its head. And I've had all kinds of work from home jobs. I've done some pretty crazy things just to be able to work from home. I was pregnant with my last when I decided work from home was the only way that I was ever going to work again. So we set up an office in the spare bedroom of our apartment. At that time, we had a 3-bedroom apartment. It was me and my husband at the time and our baby. And then we had another one on the way. We were going to have one of each sex. So I actually worked in the spare bedroom, and I had to deal with interruptions from my then 2-year-old. And she would, she was 2. So I had to learn to work around those interruptions and figure out the times when I could work. I couldn't have very specific, I'm going to work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. type of work hours. I was all over the calendar, or all around the clock, trying to find times that I could work, that I was also available for the rest of my family. That was pretty challenging, but it didn't require a lot of focus. I was inbound call agent for Shop NBC. And so all I had to do was take calls and process orders. It didn't take a lot of focus. I just needed the house to be, or my room to be quiet. And then over time, I started doing accounting and bookkeeping. I started doing bookkeeping, and that started to be necessary for me to focus. Prior to this, like I said, most of my jobs didn't really require that much focus. It was fairly regimented. But as I started working for my now brother-in-law, he wasn't my brother-in-law at the time, I started working with him, and I started needing to have more space mentally to get the work done that I needed to get done. So I needed to teach my children very quickly that if mommy's in her office, you can't bother her. That was there was a lot that went into that. That was a lot of me getting up and taking the kids into their bedroom and saying, no, mommy's working. I need you to stay in here. You can come get me if it's an emergency, but I need you to entertain yourselves. And other days I would just say, I'm taking the day off, and we would go do some fun things. So we went up to, this is the place, State Park, which if you're not familiar with Utah's history, that is where Brigham Young is supposed to have stood and said, yes, this is the right place. This is where we're going to settle, to the Mormon pioneers. So we went up there, and there's a whole village up there that's basically a 19th century village that's supposed to represent what it was like for the pioneers when they first moved to Utah. So we would go up there, and we would do things like that. We would go to the zoo. I would plan outings so that my kids didn't feel like I was just working all the time. Although they still felt like I was working all the time, because I was. Then my husband at the time and I got divorced, and that meant even more pressure on me. Now I had to really make money. So I started really looking for different ways to increase my income. Again, I'm still working with the man who's now my brother-in-law. And he was doing the sales and marketing, so I didn't have to do anything but bookkeeping. And I would make a list. There's a common theme here. I would make a list, and I would work my way down the list. And if anybody messed up my list, I was derailed. By this time, I've taught my children not to interrupt me when I'm working unless it's an emergency. And I have made sure to schedule special time with them so that they didn't feel like I was only working. Today, my kids are grown. My current significant other is the interrupter. And I have a hard time being really mad at him, because it's usually because he's excited. He's kind of like a giant 2-year-old. He's usually excited and wants to show me something really cool. And I am usually just like, oh my gosh, please don't interrupt me. And I've actually had to sit him down and say, if you interrupt me for a meme or anything similar to that, understand it takes me 15 to 20 minutes to get back to what I was working on. unless it's a planned break. And even then. So I have tried, and the other challenge I have is that I don't have anyone on the outside telling me what to do and when to do it. Now it's all on me. I'm the business owner. I have staff that are asking me to tell them what to do and when to do it. And so it becomes very challenging for me to then sit down with my list and say, this is the order in which I want to do my list. The challenge that I have, I never have problems, by the way. They're only challenges. Challenges are something you can overcome. Problems are a lot of times feel insurmountable. So I never talk about problems. I have challenges. So one of the challenges was that now I have this list. I have a very long to-do list, like most business owners, and everything on my to-do list takes a couple of hours. It's not something I can just knock 20 items off my list and in 5 minutes, I'm done. This is something that, oh, I need to make a video. It's going to take me at least an hour to make a video because first I have to come up with what I'm going to say. And it may take me 30 minutes the night before to determine what I'm going to say, what I'm going to talk about, and come up with an outline. And then 30 minutes the day of, because I don't edit these videos. You get the raw Donna. I'm just here. I'm going to talk to you. And so I would take 30 minutes in the evening to decide what I wanted to talk about and give myself a general outline. And then in the morning, when my makeup's fresh, it's not today, I'm doing this in the late afternoon, but when my makeup's fresh and I am ready to be seen on camera, I would go ahead and do the video because it doesn't require as much brain power as sitting down and figuring financial ratios does. So I would go ahead and knock out a video. I usually do that first thing in the morning. And then I would have a list of things that I need to do. And some of it is an all-day project. Some of it is going to take a week. I have one where I am going to be doing a video for our brand new clients and I've got to script it. This one absolutely has to be scripted. Most of my videos aren't, but this one has to be scripted. I have another video that I want to do for brand new employees. It has to be scripted. So the script is going to take me about a week to write. Well, it's going to take me several hours to write, and I may not be able to do it all in one day. I have other things on my list that may just take me a few minutes, but it's simple and easy to do. So, and some things are not simple and easy. So I have to be mindful. And one of the things that I have decided to do, whether it's right or wrong, is to begin at the beginning of the list and work on the first thing on the list until it gets done. This is the only way I have personally found to manage my ADHD so that I'm getting one thing done at a time instead of having 10 incomplete tasks. The other thing that I do is I will many times work late at night because I am a night owl. And I will go ahead and I'll start scripting videos. I will start working on some of the stuff. Anything that does not require me to be in contact with a client, I can work on late at night. Notice I'm never going to say early in the morning because I may have good plans for that, but it's not going to happen. It's just not. And then I try to figure out how to get into hyperfocus. If I can get into hyperfocus, I can knock out a lot of stuff very quickly. Sometimes, in order to get me into hyperfocus, I have to start with just saying, look, I'm going to set up a Pomodoro timer. I'm going to work for 25 minutes on this. And if I can get to 25 minutes and I'm focused, I will skip my break and go on and just keep going. If I'm still struggling to focus, I will take that and I will use that time to get the wiggles out. I still have the fidgets. So I will then get up and I will do things like, my big thing is to clean the house. I have now that the kids are gone, it feels like a pretty big house. So I will have a list. This is an ongoing theme. I always have a list and I cannot deviate from that list. It is very difficult for me if I have to deviate or if I get interrupted. And the interruptions are the biggest challenge. I tell people all the time that the operative words in work from home, the operative word here is work. That is the verb. I am at work. Now, I may be at work in my home. I may have an office in my home, but I am at work. And that's very important to keep in mind. I also have to keep in mind that one, I don't answer the door. I mean, I very seldom answer the door if I'm at home and I'm working. Partly because I generally have earbuds in, because that does, for whatever reason, just having the earbuds in, even if there's no music flowing, helps me focus. It's like a subconscious thing. I also notice that if I have certain music going, it will tune out every other noise in the house. And so if someone who's a stranger comes to the door, I will probably go ahead and answer it in case it's something I really need to deal with. But if it's a friend or family member coming to the door and they don't have an appointment, they didn't call me and ask if they could come over, they didn't call me and make sure it was okay, that is critical for working with me, because I have so much going on in my brain that if I have an unexpected guest, it feels disrespectful. It means that even though everybody knows that I work from home, because I've worked from home for over 20 years, everybody knows that I work from home, and too many people just hear the from home part. Oh, she's home, therefore she's available to sit and chit chat with me. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I am making videos. I am doing marketing. I am rewriting my website. I am doing a long list of things that need to be done. And I have office hours that I am very particular about keeping. So what do you do? Well, I've heard a lot of different tactics, and I would really love to hear from you what works for you. My biggest interrupters when my kids were still at home were the kids. So I actually spent quite some time teaching them that if I was in my office and the door was shut, they could only come in if the house was on fire. Or if there was an emergency, if there was a life-threatening thing, if you're gushing blood or fire's involved, or there's a broken bone, yes, you can come get me. But other than that, if it's something like you two are bickering, you guys can figure it out. Keep in mind, I also homeschooled during this time. So I would actually take the time to get them started on some schoolwork in the morning, go over whatever lessons that I wanted them to do, get them started doing some worksheets or anything that I wanted to have them do. And then I would go in and work. And I would work for a couple of hours. And then I would deliberately take a break. So I would work I would get them started at like 8 or maybe even 9. It might take me an hour to go over their schoolwork with them. And then I would go in and work. And at lunchtime, we would take a break so that I could feed the kids. And we might take a little bit of a longer lunch and spend time together. And then I would go back to work and work for a couple more hours. I'd come out for a little break, spend some more time with the kids, check on them. And then I would go back to work. It was the only way that I could see working as a single mom. It's the only way I could see working as a mom. So that was how I handled that with little kids. Now with grown-ups, it's a little bit harder. Generally speaking, well, when I first started working from home, my neighbors had a problem with it. They did not want to deal with me working from home. They thought that I was constantly available. I do remember one neighbor who had a baby and a toddler, and she knew that I worked from home. She was very respectful of my time. She didn't ever just drop in on me, except for once. And the once was her baby had evidently swallowed a barrette. So she was rushing the baby to the emergency room. She knew I was home. She knew my door wasn't locked. And I remember her knocking on the door hard, like the cop knock, opening the door and yelling, "Donna, I have to take my baby to the emergency room. Would you watch my little boy?" She pushed him in the door and shut it, and she left. And because it was an emergency, and she never did it before or since, I was totally fine with that. In fact, I remember talking to her afterwards and saying how thankful I was that I was able to work from home, so that in the event of a true emergency like that, I was able to watch her little boy. I was able to bring him in, get him going with my son, get them involved in Legos and that kind of thing. So we were able to be there for her, but she was respectful of my time. The other big challenge is the friends and family. My neighbors get it now, but my friends and family, some family members do not seem to get it. Most of my family, the Harris family, gets it. Many of us have worked from home, so we all get it. Some of the rules that I have put into place are things like, if it is after 9 a.m., if it's before 9 a.m. and you want to come over and see me, drop dead. I'm a night person. I'm not awake. I'm getting ready for work, or I am asleep. I can't before 9 a.m. Unless it is pre-planned. So if we have something super duper exciting that's going to happen in the morning and I already know about it and I'm excited about it, that's one thing. But basically, I don't exist before 9 a.m. And I've had to even teach my adult children that if you call me before 9, I'm probably not answering the phone before 9 or after 9. So before 9 a.m. or after 9 p.m., no. And that is an old habit that goes back to the days when our phones were tied to the wall. And when the phone rang, it rang through the whole house because we had extensions. This is old-fashioned. So we had extensions through the house. So if you called the home number, you would wake up the whole house. So nobody called before 9 a.m. or after 9 p.m. unless you had a long distance call. And then that was back when we had to pay for long distance. So there is that. That is a rule that my mother has just pounded that into me over the course of my life. And so I continue to live by that rule. I don't call anyone before 9 a.m. or after 9 p.m. unless I know that they are shift workers and I know what their schedule is, or I otherwise know that it is okay. I'll text. I can text, but don't expect me to be on the phone and pleasant before 9 a.m. or after 9 p.m. And that's just because it is, before 9 a.m., most people are getting ready for work. They're trying to get their kids off to school. They're busy trying to get their days started. And after 9 p.m., they are trying to get kids in bed. They are wrapping up dinner. They're cleaning their house. They're trying to go to bed themselves. So that is very much what I grew up with. So after 5 p.m., you have a short window there where I could probably accept drop-ins, but I don't like to. In other words, I don't want to have it's difficult on me to have people just drop in without calling ahead of time. So if you want to come see me at my house, it's usually a really good idea to call or text ahead and say, is this a good time to come over? That's all it really is. And if I say no, that's fine too. That just means it's not a good time. It doesn't mean I don't want to see you. And the reason for that is I have to mentally get prepared. Unless you're an especially close friend, I have to mentally get prepared for you. Because I have everything going against me. I don't know how I'm as successful as I am. I am an introverted night owl business owner who has ADHD, So I have a lot of things that I really struggle with. And so one of the ways that I really try to mitigate some of this is to say, if you want to come over, great, give me a heads up before you do. make sure it's okay. And I consider this basic common courtesy. I don't like it when people just drop in. Again, if you're a very, very, very close friend, that's fine. But the rest of the time, most of the people that just drop in are either solicitors, salespeople, or the other people I would expect to show up without warning or police. And I don't want to talk to them. I appreciate the work that they do, but I don't want them coming to my house. So that's pretty much it. So now, if you put those boundaries in place and you tell people, if you come to my door during my work hours, and these are my work hours, I will not answer the door. Pretty soon they stop showing up. The other thing that I do, I am very brutal with anyone that's a solicitor. I have a no soliciting sign on my front door, and I am very quick to point to it and say, you have no business knocking on my door. I already said I don't want your stuff. And again, evidently word gets around because I haven't had any problems with them for a while. So what do you do when it's a family member that you live with? Well, again, you have to really set those expectations, and you have to really set those boundaries of, if I'm in my office and the door is closed, I am to be left alone unless the house is on fire, unless you have a broken, if you've broken a bone or gushing blood, you can come interrupt me. But the rest of the time, understand that I'm working. And it has to be very direct, because I have found that if I just say, yeah, I'm working, people still think that means it's okay to interrupt. But if I shut the door, if I put a sign on the door, and I've done all these things, then I can usually manage the interruptions a little bit better. If you have a family that just absolutely will not leave you alone to work, you may be in a better position to rent an office, a single office. And here in northern Utah, well, I guess this is central Utah, I don't know what they call it, Utah County, I'm just south of Salt Lake City. I can get offices to rent for actually quite cheap. So that is also an option that you can have, because then you actually have to go to work. The downside is now you have that commute you didn't want. Bottom line for all of this is, as someone with ADHD, it is extremely difficult for me to get back. And like I said, I've tried all of the time management things. Calendar blocking works to an extent. The list rules it all. It is the one ring to rule them all. And that is the only way I've been able to get everything done, is to have a list, to stick to my list, to follow the list, and to have very dedicated times of, this is when my staff meeting is. This is when I go and meet with certain clients. This is when I take care of client work. And the rest of the time, I stick to the list. Well, why is the list so incredibly important that I just cannot bring myself to do anything outside the list? It is because if you have ADHD, by the way, and you have found some good ways of coping with it, please let me know. This is something I really, really struggle with. The list is all. So I used to say it's because I have very linear thinking. It is because I cannot bring myself to be distracted. And if I'm working on something on my list, I have to begin at the top. I don't even want to pick and choose. I have to go ahead and set that list up how I want it, in the order in which I want those tasks done. So I will actually make my list with the things that must be done today at the top. If I can get through those, then I'm doing really well. Unfortunately, like I said, now that I'm the business owner, many of my tasks are going to take hours. They're not something I can knock out in 5 minutes. They're not something I can knock out in 30 minutes. It is going to take several hours of dedicated work. So I put a sign on my door. I shut my office door. I have gone out and found other places to work. I cannot work in a coffee shop, by the way, because there's too many distractions. If you walk past me, it's a distraction. I will get derailed. Also, I can't work at WeWork for the same reason. All of the WeWork offices near me, all of the co-working offices have glass partitions. And that means I can see everything that's going on, which means it's even worse than working in a bullpen, and I cannot work there. That is for, those are for salespeople. They are not for entrepreneurs who are trying to get a lot of work done in a short amount of time. So I will close the door to my office. I will put my earbuds in. I will start playing some music. I will set up a Pomodoro timer. And I will also tell my sweetheart that if I am outside of my office, you can talk to me, but understand that from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and sometimes later, I'm very focused on the things that I need to do, and I'm not going to be thinking about anything else. It has been an ongoing challenge, however, because although he claims to have ADHD, I don't think he does. I always laugh and say you can tell that my daughters and I have ADHD because we will talk to each other and have conversations about different things at the same time. So I will be talking about work, and my daughter will be talking to me about her relationships, and we just keep talking. We're just like, oh, okay. And then my younger daughter, I actually have to dial into what she's saying. She's in California for a few months. And so when she calls, it's usually because she's having a problem in a relationship. She's serving an LDS mission. So she's learning how to live with other women. She's learning how to be a leader. And sometimes she gets to call me on Mondays. It's the only day she can call. And when she calls, many times she has questions about how do I lead in this situation? So that means she's got a roommate that's with her 24/7. And there's times when she has some conflict with that roommate. They only live together for maybe 3 months at a time. So, but there's still times when, because they are serving a mission for our church, they have a regimented schedule, and she has called me and on her data call and said, I'm the senior companion. I don't know how to get my companion to do scripture study. And I said, well, you don't ask her if she wants to do scripture study. You say, do you want to study the Old Testament or the New Testament? Do you want to study the Gospel of Mark or the Gospel of Matthew? And that takes away their ability to say no. I said, it's just like when you were 2. I never said, do you want to get dressed? Because you would say no, you wanted to run around in your diaper. I said, I would say, do you want to wear the yellow dress or the green dress? And those were the only choices I gave you. And she was like, oh, that makes sense. So I do need to be more connected to her when she calls, because she is calling me many times with questions and challenges that she needs advice for. But my older daughter and I, both ADHDers, we will often have entirely 2 different conversations, or we will just jump around from subject to subject like crazy. And that is just because of the way our brains work. Which brings me to why it is such a bad thing to interrupt someone with ADHD. I was just looking on Lifehacker, and they had a story about a study that shows that even a 3-second interruption can reduce productivity quite a lot in people without ADHD. When you do not have ADHD, it is still difficult to deal with interruptions because we do not multitask. I used to laugh and say I was very good at multitasking. It's not true. I was just able to switch faster. Multitasking is just, our brains are not wired for that. Whether you have ADHD or not, humans are not wired to multitask. We're not multitasking, we're focusing on one thing at a time. This is, by the way, why texting and driving is so dangerous, why being on the phone and driving is so dangerous, is because when you're driving, you need to focus on driving. And if you are, if you're on the phone, even if it's hands-free, it can be very distracting because now you're trying to shift your attention from the voice in your ear to the road. And for someone with ADHD, it can be debilitating. So what I really mean by that is no matter how good you think you are at multitasking, you're not. You cannot multitask. Humans cannot multitask. What I used to be able to do when I was young was I could focus on one thing and switch really fast. But as I have gotten older, I have discovered that my ability to switch is dramatically reduced. So, and then if you have ADHD, you don't have that ability to switch. It is very difficult to get into the focus, and it is very easy to be derailed from focus. So ADHD, although they call it attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they call it an attention deficit. It is not a deficit of attention. It is a different form of attention. And that means that when I sit down to work, I either have to have planned everything out the night before, or I have to have a very strict task list and stick to it. If I don't have those things, then it's going to take me a long time to find a task that I can focus on. Once I start on my task, if I'm having trouble focusing, then I will take my Pomodoro breaks. So the Pomodoro timer, which I've covered in other videos and I'll cover again, is Pomodoro is just Italian for tomato. And the reason they call it the Pomodoro technique is the guy that came up with it had a tomato-shaped kitchen timer. He would set it for 25 minutes. He'd sit down and work. When it went off, he would take a 5-minute break. That can work really well for people with ADHD to get them started. The problem that I have with both the Pomodoro technique and calendar blocking is that at the end of that time, if I am not done with my task and I am in flow, I do not want to be interrupted further, so I will turn off all of my notifications. However, if I am not in flow and I am struggling to remain focused, getting up and moving around can help. So I use Pomodoro technique very judiciously. And that means that I will sit down and I will tell myself, I'm going to focus for 20 minutes. And at the end of 20 minutes, when this goes off, if I'm not in flow, I have permission from myself to get up and move around. If I'm not in flow, that's not a problem. But if I am very, very, very focused, then I will ignore the interruptions. And then I will, sometimes it really helps. I've cleaned half my house today because I just can't seem to get in the flow. If I do it that way, and if I take my list and I begin at the beginning and I just stay focused on the list, I can get a lot done. If I stay focused on the list, even though I'm taking little breaks here and there on purpose, then I can still stay focused. Where I have problems is if I am focused on something or if I'm doing something. Like I said, Lifehacker showed a study that showed that even a 3-second interruption at the wrong moment can dramatically increase error rates. And I believe that. I've had my sweet darling husband come in and at the wrong time interrupt me when I was doing something as simple as sending an email with an attachment. So I would start on the email and I would put the email address in and I would type it up, and then he would come in and interrupt me and I'd click send without the attachment. So I finally had to tell him, if you give me something to do, you give me something to do when you leave the room. Because if you keep talking to me, I can't focus long enough to get this done. You let me do this thing And then I will come out of my office because I do want to spend time with him. Then I will come out of my office to spend time with you. And then I can figure out other ways to like study, finish up my last few classes for my master's degree. But it has to be on, I want to say on my terms. It does have to be on my terms because I'm the one that's in charge of my focus. And so I'm anxiously looking for different ways to improve that. And for those of you who are wondering, I am not medicated. I tried Adderall, I've tried Ritalin, I've tried several stimulants. They don't seem to help, or they do help, but the side effects, particularly the dry mouth, is so debilitating that I just really struggle with it. Adderall gives me dry mouth like nobody's business. It hurts. I have some other stimulants. I live on caffeine. There's other stimulants that I use because stimulants do work, and I do try some things like Thesis that is supposed to help with focus. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So I'm trying different medications and different combinations and different supplements and different things. So far, the one thing that's worked the most is well, I don't think I even want to get into that. Anyway, so I have discovered that many of the stimulant medications that are prescribed for ADHD, really the side effects for me are just too much. I can't deal with them because I'm very sensory. And so if anything doesn't feel right in my body, I just can't focus. And that kind of defeats the purpose. So my drug of choice is Diet Coke. Can you see the can? Stupid background. Diet Coke, the caffeine does help. Occasionally other caffeine supplements, that is generally what I will take. And that does help to an extent. So it can be done, but if you are a business owner who is a night owl with ADHD, understand the deck is already kind of stacked against you. So rather than be concerned that you are not the same as everybody else, I would encourage you to embrace this as your superpower. ADHD harnessed correctly can be an absolute game changer. Again, it takes a lot of work in the beginning to teach people, do not interrupt me when I'm working. If I'm in my office with the door shut, do not interrupt me. You might have to find an office outside of your home to be able to do that. You can also put a sign on your door. I am working, do not interrupt. Anything that you can do to manage that. But the other difficult thing is to know when you can be interrupted. And when, if you're really struggling with focus, and it is okay to give yourself some grace and say, I can't focus today. I'm going to end it early. I'm going to go do something else for a while. Again, in my profession and with what I do with my business, I will often ask one of my staff members to please make sure you're covering the phones, because I will not be, and I will I'm going to go do something else for a while. I may need to go take a walk. I may need to yell at my husband. I may need to get after my kids. I may need to go do some cleaning for a little bit, anything to get me up and moving for a few minutes. And many times that will help me get settled back in so that I can get back into focus. If I'm in focus, however, I absolutely do not want to be interrupted, because it's so hard to get there to begin with. And I do have to communicate that very clearly to my friends, my family, my staff, my husband, my kids, everything. And at the end of the day, I also have to learn to live with it. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video. I've kind of rambled long enough. This is something that I struggle with quite a bit. And again, if you happen to have ADHD, please share your coping mechanisms with me, not counting medication. because like I said, I can't take any of the stimulant medication. The side effects are too much. But I am looking for other ways of managing this. So I'm very open to that. And I will talk to you again very soon.